Hello everyone, Richard here again. Recently I've made a few videos on the Raspberry Pi 3 Model B Plus and running it using a large size micro SD card, in this case the SanDisk Extreme, various cards, 64 and 128 gig micro SD cards, and that worked great. I'll put a card for that up there for everyone if you haven't seen those yet. But in this video what I'm going to do, I've been asked a good question, and I'm going to answer that question. And the question is, can you run a Raspberry Pi 3 Model B Plus using a hard drive instead of the micro SD card? And the answer to that question is absolutely. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to do that. So if you wish to comment, if you got questions or suggestions, put it in the comment section below. I will put links to all the hardware that I use in this video in the video description below as well, so you can get it from the same people that I got it from. So we're going to need some a micro SD card of some kind and something to read it with inside your computer, okay? So we're using Windows 10 here. You can use, I've used as small as an 8 gig micro SD card to do this, and as large as the 128 gig. I'm going to use the 128 gig this time primarily because it's in my hand, number one. Number two, it's fast. So, if you have an SD card reader and an SD card slot in your laptop or computer, you can use an SD card adapter with a micro SD card, or you can use a USB 3 or 2 micro SD card reader. This is a 3. I have that there. So whatever way you get the card into your computer so you can use it. The other thing I'm using is this right here, the Elutang USB 3 external hard drive enclosure. And you can see there, I've got a 320 gig old drive that I had kicking around. So, basically I'll put links for this stuff in the video description below as well for everybody, so you can get them from the same people I got it. I got this from Amazon, and you can see right there, $9.63. Totally affordable, and it is USB 3, and basically it will support SSD hard drives as well. Okay, so real handy to have an enclosure like that. I love it, works great. And the other thing you may require here is a good power supply for your Raspberry Pi. Now I'm using the North Pada. I do have a video on that. I'll put a card up somewhere for that. And it has no problem running this drive and everything else I plugged into the Raspberry Pi 3 B Plus so far. So, if you have that little thunderbolt come up when you plug something like a hard drive into your Raspberry, well, your power supply is an issue. Maybe get a better one. See my video about the one I use, and it gives me no problems at all. So let's go get some software first. This is what we're going to do. So the first thing you're going to need is a Raspbian image, okay? So this is done with images for a reason, and you'll see in a minute why. So let's go get the image, download Raspberry. I'm jumping ahead. Just do a Google search for Raspbian. Let's do it right, with the right spelling, R-A-S-P-B-I-A-N, and then just go to the download Raspbian for Raspberry Pi, all right? And you have all sorts of different options here. But what we're looking for is, I'm going to use the Raspbian Stretch with desktop and recommended software image. This is not noobs. This is actually a image file for the operating system that's going to be running on your Raspberry. Okay, so download this any way you want. Torrent if you want to torrent it, but I download the zip. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. Okay, so save it, and so I'm going to say save the file. And it's going to ask me where I want to put it, and normally I put everything in my downloads directory. And this is going to go on the Raspberry Pi. And since it's a huge file, it's 1.7 gigs, just like the noobs, it's very large. I'm not going to do the full download here. I'm just showing you the download process. Save it to where you wish, and then click save, and you'll be done. So I'm assuming you're going to do that, and for the sake of brevity, I'm not going to do it because it takes forever. So I'll cancel this out here. And so get the Raspbian Stretch with desktop image, either zip or download zip or the torrent. Don't worry about the fact that it's a zip. It's no big deal. We don't have to worry about that. I'll show you why here in a second. The next thing you're going to need is a image burning or image creating program. And what I use, and most people use here, is something called etcher balena. So let's go click on that, or balena. And it's a free piece of software for Windows, x64. I'm assuming everybody's running 64 at this point. If you're not, okay, well, choose what you want. But just go with the default, which is right there. And this is free software. It installs on your computer and allows you to, image these files to an SD card or a hard drive. So let's go here, download that, and then of course save the file. And I think I already downloaded this. Let's see, Balena. So it would be under, yeah, there it is right there. So I've already downloaded it. Just again for the sake of brevity, let's see what size it actually is. It is, yeah, very small, 75 megabytes. I could do it again, but there's just no point. I already have it. Download it to where you wish to download it to, and then we're going to open it up and run it and install it. Okay, so let's do that. I don't need to save. You save it. I don't need to save it. Let's go open it up, and it should be right there. There it is. So go through the setup here. It's going to go with default. Go with all the defaults. There's no need to modify the installation. Wait for this to continue to go through. Okay, agree to the license agreement. And I've already installed it. I don't know what it's going to say. It's probably going to say something like reinstall or something. We'll see. But this is the program we're going to use to extract the image and burn it, or they say burn it, but load it onto the hard drive or the SD card. We're going to do it on both. So I'll wait for this to happen. No big fanfare. There it is right there. Okay, there it's actually showing up on the screen. So there it is running. This is Etcher. So this is the program we're going to use to take that image we just downloaded, that Raspbian image, and put it on a drive. So let's plug in one of the drives. Let's start with the micro SD card, and then we'll go to the hard drive. Basically, we have to do two images, and you'll see why in a second. But all right, here we go. There's the micro USB in there. So I'm going to select an image. I've plugged in my micro USB into my laptop, or you can do that with your computer too. So I'll select an image. Mine's under Raspberry Pi, under downloads. Wherever you put yours, you select it. Now, the nice thing about Etcher is that you don't have to extract the zip file. It'll read it right off the zip file. Though I have extracted it here, you don't need to. So I'm going to choose the zip file that I downloaded directly and hit open. And now it's asking me to select the drive. It knows that I have a storage device USB. It says, there it is, large drive, and it warns you it's a large drive. So just choose that. I'm putting it on the 128 gig. And the reason it warns you it's a large drive is because you might be formatting. When you do this image process, it's like formatting the drive. You lose everything on it. So be careful. Make sure you're putting the image on the right drive. So hit continue. And now you have the option to flash. We're going to click flash, and I'm going to continue that. Now see, it warns you again. Attention, right? Make sure you're doing this correctly. So read the warning. Make sure you're doing it on the right drive. Look at your file manager. Make sure that it is where it's supposed to be going. In my case, it's E drive 128, and we're cool. So let's go and continue here. And of course, Windows is going to say, do you want to do this? I said yes. And then it's going to go through. And it's going to be 4.82 gigabytes by the time it's done. So a 4 gig micro SD card will not work. You need at least an 8. And so here we go. I'll pick this up at the other end. So that took a few minutes. I forgot to mention here that it doesn't matter what your drives are formatted to. It will wipe them out. Okay, so I mean, before I started, my drive was 128 gig, all exFAT and formatted completely. So let's go take a look at it now and see what we got. Actually, it unmounted it there if you saw it. So I have to remount it to get it to show up again. So I'm going to unplug it. And plug it back in. And of course, Windows is going to try and format it because it doesn't understand an ext4 format. So let's cancel that. Right-click your Windows icon, go to Disk Management, and there it is, 119 gigabytes. And you can see that it's basically formatted with a FAT43 megabyte FAT32 partition and something else it doesn't understand, a healthy partition, and blank space after it. So that's the micro SD card. So we're actually now that it's mounted, that's perfect. Okay, so after the program, Etcher's done with it, unplug it, plug it back in, and the next step is we're going to have to do a little bit of editing on one of the files on that that micro SD card. So let's do that. All right, and we're going to go to the boot drive here, which is E in my case, but whatever yours is, it could be E, F, whatever, but it's going to be labeled boot. That's what we're looking for. So then we're going to look for a file called config right here, okay? And we're going to double click that. And this is the config file for the operating system, the Raspbian operating system. And what we're going to do is scroll down to the very bottom, and down here, we're just going to put a cursor down there, and we're going to enter one line into this, okay? And the line's pretty basic. I'm just going to hit enter here. Give me a space. And I'll put this line in the bottom video description for you guys, so you guys know. You can just copy and paste it out of there as opposed to typing it in. But it's going to be this. Add this line. So it's boot config.text is what we're editing, though it didn't show the text. It's config. And then copy this line, program underscore USB underscore boot underscore mode equals 1. So I'm just going to copy it here, as opposed to typing it in, and put that into that file, and then just save it. File, save. So, and then we close off the notepad here. Now, what we just did is we told the configuration program that installs the operating system, the Raspbian, to go looking on the USB drive for the boot process or the boot files. It's by default not set that way, okay? So now it is. So we've got the actual, the micro SD memory card set up, ready to go. And so let's eject it. Let's go down here, over here. Eject USB storage. There we go. Now it can be taken out, so I'll take that out. However you do yours. Next, we're going to plug our hard drive in and format it. Well, not format it, image it, and we'll go through the steps there. Okay, so I plugged the drive in. It's initializing. Again, if you want to see the drive, right-click your Windows icon, go to Disk Management, and you can see that it's right there, right? This is it. It's a 1 NTFS partition, 298 gigabytes, and ready to rock, right? So let's. I'm going to close this out. Now go back to your Etcher and click on Flash Another, and we're going to flash the exact same image. So by default, it's keeping the same image here. So select the drive. And it's telling you here, well, there's a 320 gig drive you can use. That's what we're going to use. Click on that. And then click on Continue. And then go to Flash. Flash that drive. It says it's warning you that it's a big drive. Are you sure you want to do that? Yes, we do. Click Yes. And it's starting. So it does a flash process, and then it does a validation. And I'll pick that up at the end of the validation, and then we'll configure it as well, and then we'll rock on from there. Okay, we're done. It's completed that whole process of flashing the drive. At this point, it's also unmounted it. So let's see if that's true. Let's go right-click your Windows icon again. Go to Disk Management. Yeah, it's yeah, so we're not going to do that. Just hit cancel here. I'm just going to unplug it, replug it back in, see what it says. There it is. So yeah, exact same thing that it did to the micro SD memory card. So at this point, we got to go and configure it as well. So let's just go close that out. We don't need this anymore. Let's go to your file manager. Again, the boot disk, make sure that the other drive is off of there, so you know that you're doing the right one. So boot and config again, and add that same line at the bottom, which was right here. There we go. So program, copy this here, program underscore USB underscore boot underscore mode equals 1, just as you see there, or just copy and paste it from the video description below. So there you go. Then we're going to hit save here. Save. And close it out. Now if you open that up again, you should see that at the bottom line, just to make sure. There it is. So that's perfect. So at this point, we've got both drives imaged correctly. We've got the configuration modified the way we want it modified. And all we need to do now is insert the micro SD card into the Raspberry Pi and plug the hard drive that we just imaged into it at the same time and boot it up. At that point, what we're going to do is go through the installation program. I'll show you that in a second. And then we're going to finish off. And I'll show you a few tricks after we've got it all working to make it even better than the default settings that you would have without doing what I'm going to show you. So let's put this hardware onto the Raspberry Pi and rock on from there. And before you go rocking on, I forgot to show you one thing. Make sure you eject the drive correctly. So go down here and click on your safely remove hardware and eject media button down here. Click on eject. Yeah, I never just pull it out, okay? That's it. So now it's ready to be disconnected. Disconnect it from the computer, and let's plug it all into the Raspberry and rock on. All right, hopefully you get this startup screen, resize the file, boot, and it's rebooting in 15 seconds or 5 seconds, I'm not sure. Here it is, the 4 Raspberries coming up. And welcome to Raspberry Pi Desktop. Of course, it's going to go through the configuration. It currently is running with the micro SD card. And basically just let it boot up to the desktop. Once it gets to the desktop, don't configure it. There's no point because it's running off the micro SD card. The whole point of booting to the desktop is to get the micro SD card to write the config file that says next time you reboot, use the hard drive instead, and it will do that. So let's just get it to the desktop. When it gets to the desktop, I'll just shut it down at that point and take the micro SD card out. Right now, it's in the process of doing that. So we're booted up to the desktop, and you can see the configuration that you normally get when you first install and operate, well, Raspbian into your Raspberry. We don't want to use this because right now, I'll show you what's going on. Let's do a df-h, which is disk-free human readable. That's what that means. And that tells you how your drive's being used. And you can see that there's no point configuring this right now because it's still running off the micro SD memory card. You can see that it's 118 gigs and it's not, 320 gigs, which it should be if it's running off the hard drive. But that's normal, that's okay. We just needed it to boot and configure the config file and set everything up to go to read the hard drive on the next boot. And you can see the other hard drive is here. It's just not configured yet. It's configured to install the operating system again. And that's what it's going to do on the next reboot. And then it'll be reconfigured again. So I know it sounds weird, but anyways, it doesn't matter. What matters right now is that you shut down the computer after this installation on the micro SD card. Take the micro SD card out and reboot the machine or the Raspberry with only the hard drive plugged into it. And it should boot into this same screen again. And at that point, you can configure it permanently. All right, I've removed the micro SD card, the 128. I'm booting with just the hard drive at this point, and you can see the light flashing on the hard drive. Resize the root file system, rebooting in 5 seconds. So right now the Raspberry Pi is installing that image on this drive. So the primary purpose of the first boot was to get this to happen. And there we go, right? So it's booting again right now. There we go, we got the 4 raspberries, and my capture card has a bit of a problem when the thing reboots, but there it is. Let it go through, and you can see booting up beautifully. Love this thing. Can't wait to have just a hard drive running on my Raspberry. There it is, all set up, running. Okay, so we'll let that boot up. When we get to the configuration screen, again, I'll configure it, then I'll come back and I'll show you what the finished product looks like. I'll give you some tips on how to actually change a few things on the operating system to make it much better, and you know, a couple tips and tricks here and there. All right, we've successfully booted to the desktop using just the hard drive at this point. You can see the configuration here. I'm not going to bore you with that. I will do it in a second and then come back. But right now I want to show you what's going on as far as the disk space is concerned. So here we're going to do df again, space slash, -h. So disk free, human readable. And now you can see I got a 294 gigabyte drive. 4 gigs of it being currently used, 2% basically, and all the different partitions and stuff that are running on that drive currently. Okay, I will show you how to install a partition program that will show you all this stuff graphically a little later on, but right now I'm just going to configure this, and then we're going to come back to the desktop and I'm going to show you a few tricks to make this work even better. Okay, because right now we've got it's configured to be running off a micro SD card, which means it's got a really small swap file. So I'll show you how to fix that issue, address that, and make it a much larger swap file so you can run bigger programs and you know, more or less treat it like a desktop computer at that point. But let me configure it and come back and do that. I did the installation configuration that normally comes up when you first install the operating system. So now we're all set up. I'm on Wi-Fi up here. Let's see if my mouse works. Here we go. And I'm connected. Everything's cool. So right now, let's do a df again. See what's going on. df-h, right? Same thing as before. We've got the 294 gig drive, 2% used, so on and so forth, right? But problem right now is that, you know, the Raspbian OS or images are made to run on a little micro SD card, not on a 300 gig hard drive. So they go, okay, well, we're going to be in a small space. We should use a small, you know, swap file. Plus, the Raspberry was originally meant to be just a development platform, so it didn't need a lot of swap file. It wasn't meant to be used this way as a desktop, but now it is. So no big deal. You can work your way around that, but you need to adjust the swap file to run larger programs. And here, I'll show you what I mean here. I'm going to use another actually, give me a second. Let me plug in my USB. There we go. And okay, so let me open. I just plugged the drive into it with my notes on it. There it is. There we go. So what we're going to do is look at the swap file that is currently configured. So let's see what we got. So it's and if you can see the commander, it's right up here. It's -h space /var/swap. So I'm just going to copy that in there, and I'll put those in the video description below, as well as the hardware links to where I bought this stuff. So let me just drop it in there. Oops. Okay. I did say no. Maybe I didn't. Here, hold on. Copy it, and then just paste it, and hit enter. And you can see here it says 100 megabyte swap file. I mean, that's really small. If you're running large programs, you're going to run out of memory in no time at all. So a swap file, if you don't know, is virtual memory. And what happens is when you run out of physical memory, the computer starts using the hard drive as virtual memory. Well, 100 megabytes is not a lot of virtual memory. So let's increase that so you can run larger programs. So the way to do that is to go and modify the file or the configuration file that handles the swap file. So we're going to do that by putting in this command, the sudo nano etc. Again, I'll put this into the video description below. I'm just going to copy it here and then paste it in here. You can manually type it in from what you see here as well. It'll work. So there it is. Hit enter and you see your swap file configuration. Now in here are all the parameters for the swap file. And you can see, if we go scrolling through this, that the config swap size is 100. So it's locked in at 100 megabytes. Now you could change this to 1,000 and then it would be a gig. You could change it to 10,000 and it would be 10 gig. You name it, right? You could change that manually. But it's not really all that efficient and you may be wasting hard drive space or you may not have enough. So what I'm going to do here is show you a trick where the computer figures out how much it needs and it just uses it, okay? Which is much easier than trying to guess it yourself. But if you want to hard code a swap file of a certain size, you can do it by changing this number right here from 100 to whatever it is you want, okay? But right now it's at 100. So I'm just going to put a hashtag in front of it or a number, which is a comment. Basically, it nullifies the command. And now I'm going to go down a little bit more, and you see that there's two other settings here. There's the swap factor and the maximum swap. So you can say to the file as well, I don't want any bigger than 2048 megabyte swap file. And if you uncomment this line, that will happen. But I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. I want to uncomment this line, take the hashtag or the number symbol out from the front of it. That enables this configuration or this parameter to go into the configuration. And you can see here it says set size to computed value. This times RAM dynamically adapts, guarantees that there's enough swap without wasting disk space on excess. Sounds good, right? That's what you want. So right now it's set to a swap factor of 2. You can change it to 1, to 5, whatever you want. I'm leaving it with the default here and just uncommenting the line and leaving the rest alone. So number 1, put a comment or a number symbol in front of the swap size 100. Uncomment, take the number symbol out from this, and then hit Control Exit on your keyboard. So it's Control X, the letter X, and then it says save modified buffer. You can say no and then it won't change anything, or you can say yes, which is what I'm going to do, and then it gives you an option to save the file. Here I'm going to hit return and voila, we've changed the configuration file for the swap file, right? That doesn't, now at this point you can reboot and that will resize the swap file, but if you look at it right now, you can see it's still 100 megabytes. There's another way of doing this, and it's just to restart the service that's running the swap file, okay? And that's this command right here. I'm going to drop it in here. Again, this is Linux. It's not like Windows where you got to reboot every time. You can just restart things, and it works, okay? So here we go. We're going to restart the swap service. Boom. Not much fanfare. Linux never does. Here we're going to go to look at the DU. So the disk used on this file at this point, and look at that. Now we got 1.9 gigabytes. That's a lot bigger than 100 megabytes, right? So that was the point. And this can be changed. Like I said, you can make it bigger or smaller by changing that factor on that configuration. I'm leaving it at 2. I think 2 gigs is plenty enough. So that's the first tip. And definitely, because that's going to help your computer run way better, okay? You can run much larger programs. You won't run out of swap space. If you do, now you know how to increase the swap space if you do run out of swap space, and you know how to restart it, okay? So the last thing I want to show you how to do is how to get a program called gparted. And the reason you want that is because it's a formatting and partitioning tool that will just about format and partition just about anything. That's a real useful thing to have in any computer. But in a Raspberry, it's optimal, because there's always going to be some drives being plugged in, and you may want to format or resize or do whatever you want. And even if you don't, it will give you a graphical representation of what is plugged into the computer. So let's go do that. I'm just going to copy this command. Again, I'll put this in the video description below. Okay, so there it is, sudo apt-get space install gparted, right? So enter. Excuse me. It's going to ask you, do you want to do this? Of course we do. And once it's done installing, and like I said, I am on Wi-Fi here, so it's a little slower. I should have plugged in the network, but it's okay. It's working okay. And you can see the hard drive. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there it is. It is, running like it should be. I'm just so happy to have the hard drive on my as the main operating drive on my Raspberry now. I don't know, SD cards I want to use mainly for video. I don't want to bang away at them with an operating system. They do wear out, and an operating system does hundreds and thousands of writes to it all the time, and eventually it's going to wear it out. So using a hard drive as a desktop operating system is optimal for sure. So there, gparted is installed, and at this point you can type in sudo and gparted, spell it right, gparted, or you can go here to the Raspberry button and go to preferences, and then you'll see it there on gparted as well. You take your choice. I'm just going to use the sudo gparted there. There we go. There you go, and it's working fine. All right, so at this point you can see that it's 294 gigabytes. I've got a FAT32 partition, an ext4 partition that's 298. So again, beautiful, right? And you can resize the stuff. Well, you can't resize a mounted partition, but you can play with this. Now let's go over here to the different drive, and that's my little USB thumb drive. It's just a little 1 gig drive that I put in there. And here you can see that I can do all sorts of stuff with it, like unmounted. And then go to, once I've got it unmounted, highlight it again, and I can delete it, copy it, format it to whatever I want, ext, you name it. You can redo it. And then you can go to resize as well if you want to partition it to a different size, and do that as well. I'm not going to go there, but you see what's available with gparted. All right. So I said I was going to give you a couple of tips and tricks. The swap file it's a must do. Do the swap file for sure. Gparted, it's optional. If you don't want it, don't use it. But I suggest that for me, it's a go-to tool, and it's a must-have on any Linux environment that I'm using. All right, so that's it. That's how you run your Raspberry on a external hard drive like this one. By the way, you can use larger drives. You can use 5 1/4 inch drives. You can even use large USB thumb drives too. I mean, if you had a 256 gig thumb drive, you could use it, no problem, right? It's up to you, okay? But this is for, so again, I'm using a hard drive, an external hard drive on this, but I'm telling you that you have other options. You can use solid state drives. You can use thumb drives as well. That's it for my video on booting up a Raspberry Pi 3 Model B Plus using a hard drive. If you liked this video and it helped you out in some way, do me a huge favor. Click on the like button in the bottom corner over here and give me a big thumbs up. That helps my channel, it helps my video, and I greatly appreciate it. Also, utilize the comments section if you have comments, suggestions, or questions. I look at those all the time and I answer very frequently. As well, up here you'll see a picture of me. That is the subscription link. If you want to subscribe to my channel, click on my picture and you'll be subscribed to my channel. As part of the process of subscribing to my channel, you'll see a bell icon. That is the notification bell. If you want to be notified every time I put up a new video, click on the bell icon, and that will happen every time I put up a new video. And then you can watch it at your own leisure. Once again, and like always, I want to thank you for watching and for your time.